Welcome, Andy, to the Biohacker Babes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation for like a week and a half now. This is fantastic.
Oh, love that.
Oh, thank
Which
you.
is in my
Us
world,
too.
I mean, my world is like day to day. So for me to actually be thinking a week and a half or 2 weeks ahead of time is amazing. So this is
Ah,
great.
Oh, wow. I'm so honored. Thank you. We're excited to
yes,
have you.
we're so excited. So excited. We've been talking a lot about environmental toxins this year, and we're just learning more about how they impact our health. We live in such a toxic world and it's scary. So you're going to
Mhm.
help us to be informed, but also not overwhelmed. And I am personally really excited about this conversation because I just moved into a new home. And the house itself is not new. That was a decision my husband and I made, even though, new construction is so pretty, but we
Mhm.
we chose an older home. So I'm excited to kind of learn the differences between old and new, what's lurking in our house. I've just been bugging the crap out of my husband. He just rolls his eyes. He's like, "Oh, is that toxic too?" I'm like, "Yes." He hears, and I think this is common. A lot of people just hear like more money and they don't understand the importance of why. So, can you tell us why our homes could be making us more sick?
Oh boy, that is a great question with a lot of answers that could be given here. But I will say everything we come in contact with on a daily basis, whether it's the homes we live in, the lotions we put on our skin, the hair products we use, the clothing we wear, and others that we surround ourselves with, our family and friends, all of that could lead to potential problems within our own immune system. And so for over 30 years, I've been working with a group of patients, of clients. They're known as the chemically sensitive. Many years ago, there was a term that was coined called multiple chemical sensitivity, and that is it's a disease that affects up to 25% of the population. Now we can talk about that a little bit as we discuss mold, because I do think that the two are correlated.
Mm,
But this is a group of folks that became sensitized to a specific chemical because of a massive exposure or a long-term exposure under low levels. And their body, while we normally have the ability to filter this stuff out, at some point the body says, I can't take it anymore. I can't filter anymore. And that bucket that we have inside that's collecting this to filter just starts overflowing. And so this has been my customer base for over 30 years, and they're the ones who are telling us, they're the canaries in the mine shaft telling us there's something wrong with the built environment. Now, for many years we didn't know exactly what that was, but as we're learning more about how our homes are built, the types of materials that are used, we do need to be a little more concerned, all of us, whether we think it affects us or not, because I think it eventually will. And if it doesn't affect us personally, it may affect our kids, it may affect our family and friends that come to visit us. So, uh, yeah, I think it's something for all of us to be concerned about. I don't believe that it's a contagion that all of us can succumb to if we walk into a home that's not as healthy as we'd like it to be, but it's certainly something we should all strive for.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Depends
love that you
how
said
full
it's
your bucket
so,
is.
yeah, we're big fans of the bucket theory. I mean, it just makes so much sense. And I even said to Lauren before we jumped on, I have lived in new construction for the last, oh gosh, 20, 21 years. Everywhere I've moved in, I love the new construction. I want to be the first person. I don't want to walk on someone else's carpet.
Right.
Um, I'm definitely
Yep.
guilty of that. I'm a clean freak. But with that has probably come a ton of exposure, and I tend to move every 3 to 5 years, so it's constant bombardment there. And I was like, gosh, do you think that that is behind some of my health issues? And I appreciate Lauren was like, it's probably not that one thing, but it could be, again, it's the bucket. It's like, okay, all the other things, but that's definitely a component. And sorry, I'm like in sharing my story time right now, but I just want to also share my cat who passed away a couple of years ago. She developed lymphoma. She had a 5 centimeter tumor on her liver, but she developed that within 1 year of moving into this new home. We've been here now 5 years. And I'm like, I think pets, that if you love your pets, this is something you should do for them as well. Because if you think about, like, they're always on the floor, they're licking things, they're picking
Yes.
things up and sniffing it. And I wonder if that maybe was part of why she got sick so fast, because it was like right after we moved in. Okay, done sharing my
I've had
story.
many clients. I've
But
had many clients over the years share similar stories.
really,
And
with pets
with
specifically?
pets specifically, I've
Mm,
had many clients that developed like neuropathy in their feet because of walking on carpeting for so many years. And
Hmm.
I'll say this,
wow.
if you want one good hack, live in a home that does not have carpet, because
Hmm.
carpeting,
Oh,
99.9% of the time, carpeting will be the absolute worst offender in your home, period.
wow. Okay.
Well,
Oh
my new
gosh.
home is
I have a
hardwood
lot of carpet.
on 2 floors. One floor is carpet. It's new. It's natural fibers, but it's still carpet.
Well, and so natural fibers makes it a little bit better. However, we all know that just because something is natural doesn't mean it's safe. I mean, asbestos
Yeah.
is natural. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to live with asbestos. Uh,
Yeah.
so carpet, like natural fibers, like wool carpet, is great, provided that the wool's not treated with chemical dyes and pesticides, that the backing isn't made from styrene, butadiene, rubber, which most of the wool carpets are like this. And so there are products out there that are completely toxin free, completely synthetic free. They're not as easy to find. You don't have the wonderful choices of colors and patterns because they can't use those chemical dye treatments that the other companies use.
Hmm.
So you have to make a decision. What's most important, the health of the occupant or the aesthetic? And that's a difficult decision for all of us to make. I mean, here I'm coming from this industry where I sell nothing but toxin-free materials and offer toxin-free solutions. But when it comes down to me making a decision with my wife in our house, yeah, but how's it going to look? We have to live with it. And so this is where we have to allow ourselves a little bit of grace to say that we're going to do the best we can based upon our budget, based upon the aesthetic we're trying to achieve. Because let's face it, nobody wants to live in an ugly home because that isn't mentally healthy. And if it's
Yeah.
not mentally healthy, that means it's going to actually turn into physical health issues. And
Yeah.
so
Good
having a
point.
beautiful home is actually, I consider that a healthy home attribute because it does make you feel better. So we have to have that balance. And so, sure, I can walk into anybody's home right now and probably turn them from a happy person to a depressed person very quickly, but I don't necessarily do that unless they're asking me, how do I fix this? I would like to say, listen, most of this stuff is great. And if you wake up every morning and you walk into your kitchen to get yourself a tea mug and you just love your kitchen cabinets, you love your bright colors and so forth, and that feels good, that makes you feel good, we have to account for that in the equation of building a healthy home. But if we know, if you walk into this room and you instantly start to get a headache, your chest starts to compress, you start to actually feel anxious, then we do know that there's something else going on. And now it's time to maybe make some changes.
Hmm.
Mm,
I
that's a
think
great
the
point.
anxiety is such a good point. So many people are experiencing anxiety for 1 million issues, but 1 million reasons. But I think a big overlooked cause is the toxicity. We get
Oh
put
yeah.
on
Yeah.
mental health medications, but
I speak to interior design schools all the time. I guest lecture at a lot of the schools. I remember giving a lecture a few years ago, and I was talking about what happens when the unintended consequences of trying to do the right thing. So a good example of this is many years ago when bamboo flooring became really popular in the US, and everybody wanted bamboo flooring because it was deemed as being the most eco-friendly wood flooring available. This is a grass that grows to full maturity in 4 years, where it takes an oak tree 60 years or 100 years, all these environmental attributes. But it's all grown in China. It's all shipped to the US. It's pressed together using formaldehyde-based adhesives. Now they've reduced that quite a bit. But at the time, that's all they used. And I had somebody raise their arm saying, we just put bamboo in our kitchen, and now I'm completely questioning my thoughts here. And I said, But do you love it? Do you wake up every morning and go into that kitchen and say, I love my floor? She goes, yes, it was the best. We thought it was the best decision. And I said, then go with that because it does feel good. Understand though, the next time you're making choices for your flooring or for your finishes, maybe let's look at some other things that will improve the health. Again, we're not striving for perfection here. We're striving for betterment, tolerance. You will drive yourself to the poorhouse or the nut house trying to create the perfect healthy home. It's impossible. Let's just do the best we can.
Yeah, that's so
I love
good.
that.
That's a very cool approach. So I
Yeah.
absolutely ascribe to the good, better, best model. Let's just do our best. So if we're looking at our home, I'm sure you're familiar with the dirty dozen. I'm kind of curious if there's an analogy, like what are the worst things in our home that really should be the biggest priorities, and maybe what then we can get to what are the things that are maybe B list, C list.
Sure. So in anybody's home, 90% of the chemical off-gassing, and I'll explain quickly what off-gassing is the official description is it's the release of unreacted chemical monomers from a surface. What this means is if you painted your walls and as the paint is curing, it smells, but after about a week to 2 weeks, it's fully cured. This is when off-gassing starts. Off-gassing is from that cured surface, and it just pokes out little bits of chemical for a long period of time. Most paints and coatings, even zero VOC paints and coatings, will off-gas tiny bits of chemical anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 years. So we look at materials that off-gas within the livable space. 90% of these chemicals that you'll come across inside of your home will come from the things you see and touch on a daily basis. Number one, we already talked about flooring. Flooring is the biggest offender in just about anybody's home, carpeting being the worst. The second thing would be
Can
all
I
your
jump in real
painted
quick?
walls.
How
Yes.
how long does carpet typically off gas? Is there a time frame like the paint?
I have personally tested carpeting that's 35 years old that still off gases toxic levels of formaldehyde.
Okay.
My gosh.
Okay. So I'm not in the clear by any
Yep.
means.
No, I will
Okay.
say this.
Wow.
It's gotten better over the years. And so anybody living in an older home that with older carpeting, it actually lasts longer, but it off gases more. Also, keep in mind that carpeting is a sink. It absorbs the off gassing from other materials and it keeps it in the carpet fibers and then releases it as we walk across the floor. So it's a sponge, let's call it. And so even the new carpets now that are deemed to be uh, third-party certified to be low VOC and low formaldehyde and so forth, these carpets still test out to have formaldehyde off-gassing because there's formaldehyde in the dyes, there's formaldehyde in the flame retardants and the pesticides, and these particular ingredients aren't part of the testing process. So whenever I have a client who is looking at choosing flooring for their home, this is the first thing we talk about. Let's get rid of the carpet. Let's use hard surfaces, materials that are easy to keep clean. One of the downsides of a harder surface is that some people will say, yeah, but you can see dust bunnies all the time. And that makes me, with carpeting, you don't see them. Well, that's the problem. With carpeting, you don't see them. So then it just
Yeah.
collects. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to use carpet. But other
Is
flooring
there
materials.
a good way to clean a carpet? Because when I moved in, I was searching for cleaning companies that would help with the off gassing, and no one even knew what that was in my area. It just
Yeah.
doesn't exist apparently.
Well, there's actually a company out there that produces a system. It's a company called AFM, American Formulated and Manufacturing, and they make a carpet and shampoo system. It's a 3-step system that will reduce the chemical off-gassing anywhere from 60 to 80%. It's labor intensive. You have to shampoo the carpet, and then you have to apply the second step and scrub it in. Then you have to apply the third step. So it takes a little bit. We've actually done large commercial projects with it in a lot of homes. It's very, very effective. It definitely works, but it takes some time and effort to use. But it's the only product I've ever heard of in 30 plus years that can do what it does.
So that's a direct to consumer. I would do it myself, not a company.
You can do it yourself, or we have cleaning companies around the country who have purchased it to use for clients, and it works very well. But,
Okay.
you know,
Noted.
it's, you have to remember with a lot of these things that are available, it requires the whoever is using it, the commercial company using it, to essentially admit that there's a problem. You know, if a company says, sure, I can seal your carpet, well, then you're admitting that carpet's dangerous.
Mm.
Well, then they think about it for a second and say, I don't necessarily want to admit that, because what does that say to
I
all my clients who I've
see.
helped out over the last 20 years? So it's a fine line
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
to walk. And this is normally why most homeowners buy the products, and maybe they hire a contractor and say, here, use this. And sure, I can use that. As long as you follow directions, it'll work just fine.
Mm. Okay. Did you say there's flame retardants in carpeting?
Yes. Yes. There's flame retardants in everything.
Do you
And
think that that's really necessary? I mean, obviously, your house burning down would be a pretty horrific thing, but do we
yeah,
need flame retardants in all the things?
no, no. You know,
Okay.
it's like putting flame retardants in a mattress. Listen, if my house is
Yeah.
engulfed in flames, either I'm getting out or I'm not. Flame retardants in my carpet or my mattress is not going to help. But
Yeah.
Okay.
they're in there because of the Great Chicago Fire 120 years ago, and manufacturers, because of insurance companies, manufacturers have been required to put flame retardants in their materials to meet codes. But these codes are so outdated, yet we just all, as consumers, you know, okay, they're in there. So what? What are flame retardants? Well, flame retardants can actually release formaldehyde, and a lot of them do. Formaldehyde is an ingredient that's found in so many consumer goods. We know it's a carcinogen. We know it's a key trigger for people with chemical sensitivities, with asthma. Yet we don't really concern ourselves with what materials in our home actually has it,
Mm.
because it's
Mm.
not an illegal chemical. It's perfectly legal to use.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I know.
So now I'm starting to scare
Okay,
people. I
so
apologize.
no, there's things we
No,
can
we
do.
need
Like
the
the
truth.
shampoo is
We need
helpful.
it.
Yes. Yeah, this is people don't know this information. We need to know about it so that we can make better choices. So, okay, so carpeting,
Yeah,
number
carpeting bad.
one,
Flooring is, it can
floors.
be bad because of other materials that are installed. But so you have your flooring materials, you have your walls, your painted walls and ceilings. Painted walls and ceilings are the second largest offender in anybody's home because of the area. There's so much area. You know, if you
Yeah.
have a 2,000 square foot home, you probably have about 10,000 square feet of actual painted surfaces. Now,
Wow.
paint will only off gas for 2.5 to 4.5 years, not 30 years like carpeting. So it may off gas for a shorter period of time, but there's more of it. So that's why I put it as
Mm.
number 2. Number 3,
Okay.
your cabinetry and woodwork in the home. Now, cabinetry
Really?
is only a very, very small part of the area in your home. You have kitchen cabinets, you've got your vanities in your bathrooms. However, the way that cabinets are made, typically it's made of a plywood or an MDF with a wood veneer, maybe solid wood doors and drawer fronts. And so all of the boxes are made of this plywood or MDF. It's all glued together. It's all glues, typically releasing formaldehyde. And then all the finishes, the stains, the clear coats, the paints that can release chemicals for many, many years. And so we talked about this before. Every morning you wake up to grab your tea or coffee mug and you open up the cabinet, you get flushed in the face with that
Mm.
aroma of the cabinetry. And that can be a combination of a lot of things, moisture, is including formaldehyde, other materials that are off-gassing from the surfaces. And so I put cabinetry as number 3. And number 4 would be your own personal furnishings and finishes, your window treatments, area rugs, furniture, other things that you have in your home. Those 4 areas are 90% of the potential problem in your home. That last 10% will be the things you can't see or touch, things behind the walls like insulation, caulking materials, different sealants, flashing tapes, all these things that we know they're there, but we'll never have access to it unless we start tearing the house down. So I don't necessarily worry about that stuff unless we're designing a full remodeling or a new build,
Right.
or if we're talking about mold related issues, because now we have to
Right.
talk about what's in the walls so we can remediate that.
Okay. That makes sense. Makes sense.
So
paint.
if
Can
you
talk
had to choose between moving into a new build versus an older home and you didn't have control over what was in it, what would you choose?
Oh boy, good question. So I had no control over how the home was built, but it's new.
Correct.
How old's the home? The existing home?
Let's say 20 years.
I'll take the new house.
Oh,
Duh. Tell us why.
I win. I win. No, I'm
Sorry.
just kidding.
Because of
So,
mold? Tell us why.
um, so whenever I consult with a client looking to buy an existing home, I spend a lot of time, coincidentally, with clients on Zoom calls and looking at Redfin listings because and sometimes they have their phone. We're walking through the house. We're doing a virtual tour, and they're having me look at things. I'm looking for a home that's between 5 and 10 years old. That's my sweet spot for an existing home. The reason why between 5 and 10 is, first of all the paint's done off gassing, unless they've done some touch ups and some remodeling. Usually between the 5 and 10 year mark, they haven't done any of that because it's still too new. There's no reason to fix it up. If they did fix it up to sell, well, that must be because of a problem that they incurred. So that's kind of a red flag. But let's say it's a 5 to 10 year old home that hasn't ever been remodeled at all. Most of that initial off gassing is done, but it's not so old that mold can start to be a problem in bathrooms because with bathrooms, especially tiled showers, it's not a question of if it's ever going to leak. It's just a question of when. And it's typically at that 10-year mark where it becomes problematic. And then also keep in mind that the whole energy efficient building process, so the green building movement, really started in earnest in the late 90s and early 2000s. Happens to be about 20 years ago, roughly. And back then, when this first started to become sort of part of the lexicon of our industry, the green building, energy efficiency, contractors were striving towards energy efficiency, but not really understanding the ramifications of that. You know, what is um, the consequence of trying to do the right thing? The unintended consequence. Well, in a home built in the early 2000s, they were closing up all the little gaps in the house to make it really, really energy efficient. They forgot about the people inside of the home that had to breathe properly. And now the home's not getting enough natural fresh air, and we're essentially being locked into a toxic box.
Hmm.
So in the last 20 years, and especially in the last 10 years, this has been realized like maybe we need to incorporate what are called energy recovery ventilation systems to bring in fresh air into the home because we need 5 to 10 air exchanges an hour for proper fresh air. Well, some of these homes that are built in the 90s and 2000s were boxes that were really, really tight and really good for energy efficiency, but not very healthy to live in. So that's why I would say, long story longer, I look for the time frame. It's either a home built within the last 5 to 10 years or a home built 50 years ago. Because a home built 50 years ago, we didn't have plastics. We didn't have all the synthetic materials in the house that none of this stuff breathes. We don't know how it affects with the indoor air quality with microplastics and with PFAS and all that stuff. Yes, we had to deal with things like lead and asbestos back then. However, that's all we know that. We know where it is. It was never hidden anywhere, and we can deal with that. And the homes were really energy inefficient, and therefore they naturally breathed. So, I kind of like knowing the extent of what the problems are. And these homes that were really high tech, high performance in the last 20 years, there's a lot of stuff we just still don't know about. Like, how is it affecting us?
Yeah.
Mind
Oh
blowing.
gosh. Okay. Well, I'm at 4.5 years, so I'm like
Yeah, you're
almost in
good.
that range. Almost in that range.
Now you can't move now for the next few years. You got to live in a
Oh.
healthier home for a few years.
Okay. Okay. I'm just excited for it to cool off so I can open my windows again because I do
Yeah.
feel like I'm locked in this box because it's just so darn hot out. But yeah, so I want to circle back to the paint. So I guess it sounds like my paint is maybe it's done off gassing. I should just not do anything. But maybe if someone is in a home that's less than 3 years old and that they have the paint that came with the building, whatever, should they get a cleaner paint and paint on top of it?
That's possible, yes. In many situations, because of the severity of the health issues of our clients, that really would be the way to go. I have many clients that are. I've got a client right now in South Texas that is. They bought an existing home. It's about 2 years old. They've repainted the entire home, and now they can live in it, and they feel good about where they live. It was actually a. They noticed the difference right away.
Hmm.
But I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. This always comes down to personal tolerance. Uh, it's very easy for me to say, you got to repaint. That's the only way to live in the house. Well, there are many priorities in life and many priorities in a house. There's a lot of things that we got to take care of. Maybe instead of spending $10,000 to repaint your house, maybe we should spend $10,000 and replace the carpet, or maybe we should put in a better HVAC system. So we have to evaluate every project individually. Um,
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
I guess here's the other thing too. If there's a lot of different areas that need attention in a home, concentrate on the rooms that make the biggest impact. Your bedrooms. The bedrooms need to be the healthiest rooms of the house. Period. End of story. We spend hopefully 6 to 8 hours a night trying to get restorative sleep. If you're being inundated with chemicals from the off gassing the materials, electromagnetic fields from cell towers and from wiring behind the headboard, maybe we should make that bedroom safer so that we can actually get into that good REM sleep cycle. And all these pollutants really are the opposite of what we need because they disrupt that sleep cycle.
Right. Shouldn't be detoxing all night while you're trying to recover and rejuvenate
Exactly.
your body.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Bedroom's number one. What are your thoughts on putting like an air filter in the bedroom to help with that?
I think it's in many situations, it's absolutely crucial. I advocate for whole home air purification. So if you have an HVAC system with central air, with ductwork, we'll advocate the use of a installed system. However, there are many times where you need to augment that with an additional purifier in the bedrooms. Especially, we have a lot of clients on the West Coast that are dealing with wildfires in the summertime. These purifiers are absolutely essential. They can be incredibly effective, but also understand that there's an element of noise pollution to that. So you have to decide, air pollution, noise pollution, which one do you want to deal with? What's going to affect you more to get you out of that sleep cycle? So that is something to be to be discussed.
I like the
Okay.
noise. When I take my air
Mm.
doctor out of my room, because I've been kind of moving it around the house, it's too quiet. It's
You
quiet
miss
in my
it. Yeah,
bedroom. Yeah,
right.
I'm like,
I
it's
don't
good
even
white
hear
noise.
it.
Right.
Really?
Well,
So there's
I
4
sleep with a
settings.
I sleep with a sound machine though. So maybe
Ah,
that is
good.
covering the air doctor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that it helps. And so
Yeah.
for those who have never lived with a purifier in the room or don't like listening to music at night or don't have some type of a sound machine, it can be rather traumatizing. They just won't sleep because of that constant droning. But if you're
Yeah.
used to it, then yeah, by all means,
Okay.
do it.
I
I
can't
go
sleep in silence. Oh God.
Then you're
Like,
just stuck with
that's
your own
another thing.
thoughts, right?
yeah. Yeah, that's another issue.
I do mine full blast during the day and then I cut it down a little bit at night so it's
That's a
not
good idea.
super
It's a
loud. But
very good idea.
so we
Yeah.
like Air Doctor and also Jasper. Are there other air filters that you like or companies you work with?
So I like the Austin air purifiers quite a bit, and the reason for that is that Austin uses the highest amount of carbon of any of the purification systems out there. Uh,
Huh.
with clients who have specific chemical sensitivities, you just need carbon and lots of it to absorb chemicals out of the air. And their filters that are their replaceable filters are rated for about a 5-year uh, replacement time period. So, which is a long period of time. So it's got a lot of carbon, lasts for a very long time. Um, are they the most attractive units on the market. I'll be honest, they're kind of big, they're kind of bulky, but man, do they work. I mean, they're workhorses. Every year
Okay.
I send pallet loads of these to clients in California to distribute, to sell to their neighbors in subdivisions because of the wildfires. They just work so well.
Yeah.
Mm,
Oh, so that makes sense. A
okay.
personal decision. I guess follow up to that. What about windows being open? So if there's wildfires or like Renee, it's too hot where she lives, Arizona,
And
Vegas.
we've had really bad
Nevada.
air quality from the fires.
Sure.
Sometimes I can
Obviously,
smell
if-
it here.
Yeah. If it's bad outside, probably keep your windows shut. But if it's pretty good, I guess how much should we be opening our windows in
So
contrast to the purifier?
yeah, the opening of windows is obviously very important for fresh air, but you know, how fresh is that air?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the middle of summertime, here in Wisconsin, in the middle of summertime, a lot of times we're dealing with muggy air. It's, you know, 70% relative humidity
Woo.
and
Hi.
80 degrees outside. Even at night, the temperature goes down. Last night it was in the 50s. It was beautiful. But if you open up the windows, a lot of humidity comes in the house because, you know, temperature hits the dew point and all that humidity starts to push in the house. So we want to live in an environment that has somewhere between a 35 to 55% humidity range. Obviously in Arizona, it's going to be a little bit lower. In
Yeah.
Alabama, it's going to be a little bit higher. And so we have to use means and methods to maintain that humidity level. Opening up the windows sometimes can help, but a lot of times it can hurt. And so we just want to make sure that if we're opening up the windows to bring in fresh air, be mindful of the humidity levels and how it's going to affect the indoor air quality, and be mindful of, is it, you know, pollen and ragweed season? Is it wildfire season? You know, what else are we bringing into the house? And this is where it helps having what's called a heat recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator, which brings in fresh air from the outside, filters it, and then it actually passes by stale air from the inside to be expelled outside, and it exchanges the temperature and humidity. So it allows you to bring in fresh, clean air, but not decrease the indoor air quality.
Mm, okay.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. The humidity, you said, did you say 30 to 50?
35 to 55% is that sort of that range that we want inside of our homes.
And what if
Because
it's
anything
below that?
below that can cause breathing issues. You know, it can be harmful for, you know, just it makes your throat scratchy and dry, your eyes dry. It can make it difficult to breathe if you're an asthmatic. If it's
Okay.
above that, it can actually lead to additional chemical off-gassing and mold, because mold thrives in a more moist environment. And the threshold for that is about 55%. And if you have constant 55% humidity in your home, then that humidity's got to go somewhere. It's going to soak into the materials. And
Right.
not only does it help to feed mold, if there is mold, and there's mold everywhere, we know that, but also as then that moisture evaporates out of the surface back into the ambient air, that moisture will actually carry with it the chemical footprint of where it was. So it actually increases the chemical off-gassing from surfaces.
Ooh.
Wow.
This morning, we've had crazy rain. I'm in North Carolina, so we're getting Debbie coming up the coast.
Mm-hmm.
This morning, I have a door in my bathroom, which is kind of strange, but I opened it just to see if there was rain. And within moments, my whole bathroom mirror was fogged up. And I was like, no,
Wow.
slammed the door
Wow.
shut. And I just looked, it's 94% humidity here. I was like, okay, we're going to keep that closed.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I know it's nice. It feels good to open up the windows. And so, and we get this all the time too, when somebody's saying they're painting their house and they said, we kept the windows open all night, you know. Oh, that might have been bad, because what if it starts to rain and all the humidity comes in the home? Actually, it causes the paint to cure out a lot slower. It can keep the paint sticky for a longer period of time. It can bring in mold from the outside. There's a lot of downside to just opening up the windows. So we just need to be a little more cautious in when we do that.
Okay. So checking the humidity outdoors, indoors, and
Mhm.
making that decision on the windows based
Yes.
on those
Correct.
numbers.
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful.
Okay. Cabinets?
Mhm.
This
Didn't
is
know
a
about
big,
cabinets.
yeah. I mean, you think cabinets last for so long, probably long enough until you're sick of the color and you want to change them. So I guess for anyone listening that's maybe ready to remodel, what should they be looking for? Can they go down to like, Lowe's or Home Depot? Like
Mm.
what call
So,
you, Andy. What do they do?
yeah, well, yeah. So again, it depends on how deep the rabbit hole we want to go. If somebody says we're looking for the absolute least toxic cabinetry possible, time is no concern, money is no object. There's two choices, I believe. One is to have the cabinets made by a local cabinet company and have them finished using stains, coatings that we've completely vetted to be completely non-toxic. Now, that happens every so often, but most cabinet companies would like to use the finishes they're used to because they understand the durability, the longevity. But, we have clients all the time who will use our finishes and be very, very happy with it and on new homes, monumental projects, and it works great. So you have to ask those questions. The second way to go is to go to a prefabricated, pre-finished sort of, I call it a production cabinet company, but there's a company we work with up in Minnesota called Crystal. And Crystal cabinets, they use formaldehyde-free plywood and MDF, and they actually will use a clear coat that is completely free of formaldehyde off-gassing. They're the only company I know of in North America, production cabinetry company, that will do this. So there are options. What if you say, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, our contractors want us to go down to the local big box and pick something? Okay, what can I do? Well, in this case, I recommend that people choose what are called painted cabinets or solid color cabinets. The absolute worst offenders for any new cabinetry will be the ones that are stained and clear coated, because stains and clear finishes typically off-gas tremendous amounts of formaldehyde. And you heard me talk about formaldehyde so many times now. Formaldehyde is just such a key trigger. That's the biggest thing that we protect against. Painted finishes. So if you want to get that really nice looking, decorator gray or an off-white or a bright white, this, modern farmhouse look, painted finishes typically off-gas much, much less. So even the big box stores, the prepackaged, pre-finished products, just stick with the painted version.
Okay. I don't know what I have. Probably stained and
I have no idea.
it was like
It's not the best.
with my house, it was like you have A, B, or C. Go.
Right.
Like for
Right.
everything in the house. It was like
Sure.
the nice thing was it was easy, not a lot of options, but I wish I had known more then so I could have asked more questions.
Yes and no, because if you do know more, then you start asking more questions. Listen, there's something to be said about the again, let's talk about, mental health. To understand that there's three options makes life a lot easier. If you were to design and build a custom home, there are 1,400 different materials put into that house. There's potentially 1,400 decisions to make.
Mm-mm.
If you get into the nitty-gritty like the way I do. I've had clients where they're designing and building a new home, and because of their sensitivities, they have to test each and every component down to the screws and nails that hold things together. They have to test for their own personal tolerance. So that's a lot of decisions to be made. And at some point, you just say, forget it. I can't take it. I can't do it. So sometimes it's nice to have just a few options. The more you learn about this, and now if you're in this home for a longer period of time and you want to do some upgrades, you want to do some, improvements to make things more aesthetic for the time, then just choose a little bit wiser. But now you have that time to choose. You're not being pressured by the builder to get this choice made by the end of the week.
Yeah.
It's like a
So
full-time
tough
job.
to be a consumer, being pressured to make those decisions, but also just like trying to decipher labels, which is why we have you.
It's tough to be an informed consumer. It's very easy to be a consumer and taking
nothing.
that, the ostrich approach of head in the sand and just buy off of Amazon and you're good to go. But if you actually care and you actually start digging into this, and this is interesting how this I would call it my industry has evolved in the last 30 years, and especially in the last 4 years since the start of the pandemic, is that we've all learned that our homes are full of all these materials because we're spending more time indoors. We used to spend 90% of our life indoors, and that was prior to the pandemic. Now it's how much more than that? We're working from home, a lot of us. The kids, being home more often. And because of that time inside of the house, we're looking around saying, well, I probably should repaint the dining room. Maybe I should look at the paint we're going to use because I have to be in here while it's curing. And I'm the one who's doing the new flooring. Maybe I should look at what we're doing. It actually caused us as consumers to dig a little deeper. And we're now freaking out because what's the stuff we're buying for our houses? And so we're kind of being forced into this needing to be an informed consumer. And not a lot of people are taking that very easily. And others though are embracing this idea of, you know what, now's my time. Now's my time to be a more informed consumer. So it's been tough. People are learning the hard way, and to their improvement of health, they're learning this. Some people still choose, and I will say, when I say some people, I'm talking about the contractors, builders. They still have that for the most part. There are some exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, they will maintain this. I've been doing this for 30 years. This has never been a problem. I know what I'm doing. This works just fine. My response is, I've been golfing for 40 years. I'm still terrible. Just because you do something doesn't mean you're right. Doesn't mean you're an expert.
Good analogy.
Yeah. That's like, our dad is a biological dentist, and I remember he told me a story about one of his dentist friends from college who said, 30 years out of college, he said, well, I learned everything I needed to know in dental school. It's like, just because you've been doing it for 30 years. Yeah. Like you said.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Sure, buddy.
So in some instances, I believe that an informed consumer is far more knowledgeable about this stuff than most of the industry is.
Yeah,
I can see that.
And it's because of shows like yours. This is getting this information out to the listeners, and delving deep into these topics really, really helps.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I want to say, I wish I didn't know all these things, but
Mhm.
if I don't know it now, at some point I'm going to know it, because I'm going to have to deal with the downstream consequences.
Exactly right.
And for people that are listening, if you already have a chemical sensitivity or you're dealing with a health challenge, like, toxicity is present. And if you don't have symptoms now, you probably will be dealing with something, because we live in a very toxic world. That's the reality.
Correct.
So you can stress a little bit now, or you can really stress later on. That's how I kind of feel.
I'd rather deal with it now where I have the strength to deal with it.
Ooh, very good point.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point. I mean, even like, we think about like nutrition, we say the same thing now, right? Like, are you feeding disease, or are you feeding your health now? But like, you think it's hard at this age to go to the grocery store and cook and meal prep, like, try and be 70 years old and sick and do that. So I like what you said. So you have the strength now to do it.
Yeah. So in effort to give us, our audience, some structure and not feel overwhelmed,
Sure.
can you tell them a little bit more about where you come in, how you can help? I wish I had your phone number when I was looking at houses.
Well, that's okay,
you.
because it's never too late to at least look into these things for the next project. So my website is called The Green Design Center, thegreendesignCenter.com. I started a company 30 years ago to be a supplier of healthy home goods, common sense, healthy building materials. And it's really turned into a resource of probably the most vetted, curated list of healthier home goods available. And we don't sell a lot of trinkets and knickknacks. We're selling flooring materials and cabinetry and paints and finishes and air purification systems. We're now doing an awful lot in mold remediation materials. But then I would say even more important than that is I do a lot of consulting with people. You can literally hire me for 15 minutes or an hour or an entire year's worth of projects. And I had a client just this morning, 15-minute phone call. I'm replacing the screen door in my front house. I want to make sure the contractor is using a healthier caulking material because, that odor comes into the house and can last for months or years. And so it's just a really quick 15-minute phone call. And I helped them through the process of choosing the right materials. Call I had yesterday was we're designing a series of homes in a subdivision. We want them to all be completely as low, completely non-toxic, as low toxin as possible, low carbon footprint, net zero. And that's a whole host of phone calls and Zoom meetings and so forth. So I really look at all types of projects, big or small, to just help folks live in a healthier home.
Awesome.
That's
I will be
amazing.
calling you.
Yeah.
Sending
Yeah,
you
Lauren, you
pictures.
might not stay there forever. You don't know.
That's
Right?
the other thing. So we're currently in a rental. So then the question is, how much do we invest in this home if we're not going to be here forever?
Right.
But it's still my health now.
It is. I have a number
Yeah.
of clients that are trying to find an apartment to rent. How do you find a healthy apartment? Well, it's impossible to find one that's completely healthy, but you can make better choices. And when
Yeah.
it comes to a renting of a home, yeah, there's a lot of things that you might be able to switch out if you need to, but honestly, your best bet at this point is air purification, concentrating on the materials you use to maintain the home, the cleaning materials, something as simple. This is the best free advice I ever give, which is take your shoes off when you walk into the house, right before you walk into the house. I mean,
Yes.
Can
that's
you say that
so
again?
simple.
Can you say that
Yes.
one more time?
Yeah, take your
Say it
shoes
loud.
off at the front door because everything you walk across throughout the day could come into the house. We're talking mold, bacteria. I don't even want to get into some of the crud that's on the bottom of the shoes. And imagine how much better the indoor air quality would be just from that alone.
Easy.
Yes. Yes.
So
I
easy.
always do that. And I'm even like, if I have a party at my house, I'm that person that's like, please take your shoes off at the door. And some people
Right.
are like, oh, but my heels are part of my outfit. I'm like, I don't care. Here's a pair of socks. Let's go.
Right. Exactly.
Cocktails and
Exactly.
socks.
Actually, my New Year's Eve party a couple years ago, I had a basket of socks at the front
Nice.
door for people because it was cold. I understand you don't want to take your shoes
Sure.
off if you don't have socks on, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but it's so gross. It's
Mhm.
so gross. Yeah.
I would
don't
rather
say that.
invest in the slippers for people than deal with the stuff they're bringing
Without
in.
a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you tell our audience real quick how is best to get in touch with you if they want to chat with you, consult?
Sure.
Where do they go?
Best way is actually to go to the website, thegreendesignCenter.com. From there, you'll find links to my consulting. I do a weekly podcast called Non-Toxic Environments, which actually should be starting up again soon, our newest season. We're also doing a lot more live events, video events. I do a lot of speaking for a lot of seminars, online summits. And so anytime I speak at one of those, I post it online. Here's how to listen. And so again, everything's at thegreendesignCenter.com. From there, you can link to all the different things I'm involved with.
Great.
Awesome.
We'll put all of
Thank
that in
you.
the show notes for everyone so they can follow and learn more. All right, Andy, closing question for you.
Yes.
Can you give our audience a final piece of advice, something they should start doing today to optimize their health?
Oh boy, something they should start doing today. Well, besides taking your shoes
Take
off
your
at the
shoe.
door.
Yeah. I know that's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the best things you can do right now is go into the laundry room, the utility closet, wherever you keep all your household cleaning materials. Unless you have completely, natural plant-based cleaners, throw them all out and start from scratch. The amount of chemical residue left in your clothing, on all the surfaces in your home, in the air from these traditional store-bought, easy-to-use cleaning materials can actually be the biggest offender in the house besides the materials I talked about before. It's and even more so the air fragrances, the Glade plugins.
Oof.
If you have those in your house, take them out now because those are incredibly dangerous. And I've helped numerous clients over the years remediate. They actually have to do remediation if these are used in a home for somebody who has sensitivities because it absorbs into the drywall. So
Mm.
get rid of that. Get rid of the artificial fragrances and start from scratch with natural cleaning materials. Your indoor air quality will improve immediately.
Great, great. I have
Um,
a follow-up to that though, with the cleaning. Seventh generation and Myers, these quote unquote cleaner cleaning materials or products, are they actually clean? Like when you say plant-based,
Well,
what should
so
we be looking
some of
for?
them are, so I do a lot of work with AFM. They make a cleaning material. It's an all-purpose product. I do a lot of work with Branch Basics. Branch
Oh,
Basics, great product, great people. I've known them for decades. Um, I really appreciate what they do and their level of commitment to producing the healthiest cleaning materials possible.
love that.
Um,
Do you know about Blue
great.
Land?
I'll go back to that.
I don't.
That one
I think there's
has
a lot
popped
of
up
new,
recently.
yeah, there's a lot of companies now, a lot of individuals who are saying, you know what, I've been making my own cleaning materials for so many years. I should start marketing them. I'm all
Mhm.
for it. All I ask for is complete transparency. Don't tell me your product is free of any red list chemicals and it's been certified by some third party certification. Don't show me the MSDS sheet because none of this stuff matters. Actually list to me all the ingredients so I can vet them myself. So you can vet them as a consumer.
Mhm.
Understand that there are over 92,000 chemicals used in the production of building materials and home goods. 92,000 chemicals. We don't know the toxicological effects of about 97% of them because only about 3% have ever been tested. So if you buy a cleaning material and the cleaning material says, we're safe, we use nothing but natural ingredients, but they refuse to tell you what they use, they refuse to list all their ingredients, don't walk away, run away. I want to know exactly what's in there. Now, I understand the manufacturer saying, well, it's proprietary. We don't want people to steal our recipe. I understand that. But you have to be able to show transparency because if they say, well, here's our safety data sheet, understand that a safety data sheet was never designed for consumer use. It was designed for first responders, for firefighters, for containment people. If there was a roadside spill or a job site issue, an MSDS or a safety data sheet doesn't have to list any ingredient that's less than 1% of the volume. This is where all the junk is hidden. So I want to see each and every ingredient. And fine, maybe there's 30 ingredients and maybe I can't pronounce half of them, but I can certainly look them up. And then I can make my own informed decision. And then I can tell my clients, I've looked at it, it's been vetted, we're 100% behind this stuff. And so I work with companies typically that are full transparency because otherwise, I just have to assume they're hiding something.
Yeah. Yeah. Our friend Sean Wells, who's an ingredientologist,
Mm,
he actually says same thing. If it says proprietary formula in a supplement, he says they're hiding something. It's
yep.
not just, oh, it's our secret formula. We don't want anyone to steal it. Like he says they're hiding something from you.
Yes. And a lot of
They're
times,
good
not
to
only they're
know.
hiding something, it also could be they don't even know themselves. Because when you're making a product and you're buying raw materials for that raw material may not just be one ingredient. It could be 50 ingredients for that one raw material. And they're not being told what's in there. So it goes on and on down the line. So yeah, it's tough sometimes to get the actual ingredients list, but I think that's the only way that we sort of break this whole thing open and give consumers the power that they deserve.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Oh,
agreed.
yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
You have
Andy.
given us so much good advice. Thank you.
Awesome.
We are just so grateful and can't wait to pick your brain some more and for our audience to experience you. Thank you.
Well,
Really
thank you
grateful.
for letting me ramble. I appreciate that.
Oh, there
It's a
was,
good ramble. It's
yeah.
really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I'm like so excited to share this episode. This is going to be so helpful for people. So
Wonderful.
thank you for coming on our show and thank you for all of the work you're doing. We really appreciate the transparency and the education that's so essential in today's world. So
My pleasure. Thank you.
thank you.
Yes.
And
So go to the Green Design Center, but all the other resources to find Andy will be down below. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.